I'd like to talk about the method I use to wrap bar tape because I think it looks and works the best, and I'll explain why. An important consideration is how the body weight supported by the bars may shift the wrap over time. In the drops, my hands will tend to shift the wrap towards the outside of the bar, whereas in the tops, my hands will tend to shift the wrap towards the back of the bar. What I need to do is wrap in such a way that the force between my hands and the bar will keep the wrap tight, like so, rather than loosen it, like so. With that in mind, a lot of people start from the bottom and wrap towards the outside of the bar, so that the force of the hands tightens the wrap up the bar. However, this means that any slack introduced by tightening is going to move up the bar, around the hoods, and along the tops. This also means that when you continue the wrap on the tops, you're going to be wrapping forwards on the tops rather than backwards, resulting in the force of your hands working to loosen the wrap. Instead, I like to do a quick and dirty wrap so that I can find and mark where the tape last passes beneath the drops, so that I can unwrap and then, starting from the middle, wrap towards the outside going down so that my hands work to tighten the wrap going down the drops, and then wrap towards the back of the bike along the tops so that my hands work to tighten the wrap towards the stem. This will also mean that if any slack is introduced in the system, I can either take the slack out through the drops by taking off the cap, tightening things up, replacing the cap, or along the tops by undoing the finishing tape, tightening things up, and then refinishing. Here's what the finished tape will look like. Hopefully now you can see better how the force between the hands and the bars will tighten the wrap down the drops and tighten the wrap along the tops towards the stem. If any slack is introduced in the system, I can easily tighten and take the slack down to the caps, take the cap off and refinish, or tighten and take the slack along the tops out near the stem and refinish. So here we are. I've used some electrical tape just to hold things in place while I get started, and I've lined up my tape so that that mark is in the same place it was when I first marked it. And I'm just going to start by wrapping towards the outside down the drops. Notice that I've not yet removed the paper backer from the handlebar tape. That's because I first want to make sure that the starting point I found earlier will give me the right length of wrap down the drops. In this instance, the wrap ended about an inch too short of the ends of the drops. Evidently, my quick and dirty wrap to find a starting point had been too sloppy. So, I adjusted the starting point and tried again until I was certain that the final wrap would extend beyond the ends of the drops by 1 centimeter on all sides. In this image, you can see that the wrap extends beyond the bar end, shown in red, by at least 1 centimeter. You will need this extra length later for a good finish. So here you can see I've finished the wrap down the bars, and I finished it off with a little electrical tape until I stick the cap in, which I'll cover later. And you can see another benefit of this method is that I can really shove the tape up underneath this hood. Whereas had I started from the bottom, the tape might have ended up right here, or too high, or too low. So here I can really control how the tape wraps beneath the hoods and then wrap from there. Now it's time to move on to wrapping the tops. And a lot of people do a little figure 8 around the hoods, or some people will even try doing a directional change if they started from the bottom. Instead, I just continue the wrap, because with this method, your hands will be tightening the wrap down the hoods and tightening the wrap along the top towards the stem. However, be forewarned that you may still see a little bit of metal from the hood clamp peeking its way out. Some people don't like that, so they add a little piece of tape in there. However, I like minimal bulk, and so I just continue the wrap. Once again, note that since I'm starting from the hoods, I can make sure that my wrap is tucked well underneath the hood for a nice clean look. Okay, I'm about halfway through wrapping the tops, and I want to make note of something. Make sure that you have taped your cable housings and hydraulic hoses as far along the tops as you're going to want to wrap. Otherwise, they'll move underneath the wrap as you turn the bike, and they can really mess up your wrap. So just make sure you've got it taped almost as far along as you're going to wrap the tape. I use electrical tape for this, and it works fine. So I finished wrapping along the tops, and I've temporarily secured things with electrical tape. What I'm going to do now in order to finish is cut along the tape parallel to the stem at the point where I want the tape to end. Notice when I did that, I was pulling the tape at the angle that it comes off of the bar and not pulling it parallel to the stem. I pulled it at the same angle it came off the bar, and I cut parallel to the stem. For finishing tape, some people use electrical tape. I've used that in the past and it works fine. Some wraps come with their own finishing tape. Mine did. So before I actually finish it, I'm gonna leave the backer on and do a dry run just to make sure that I can finish it so that the seam is on the underside of the bars. Now I'm ready to finish. And here's the finished top. Note that I wrapped the finishing tape in the same direction as the wrap. Now to finish the drops. Notice that I've tightly wrapped electrical tape to hold everything in place at the point where the drop bars end. I'm now going to cut off any excess so that I leave just about a little less than a centimeter of tape hanging off the end of the drops. And I'll tuck that in before I push the cap in place. Here you can see I've trimmed off the excess. Here you can see I've pushed the cap into place and tightened it, and now I'll remove the electrical tape. And here's the finished product. As you can see, it's a really clean look. And, for the reasons we discussed before, very functional. All right, and here's the finished result.